happening, Data Fam? Alex S. Moy here, aka the Data Doctor. We're going to be building out a live demo today of what you can do with LangChain and AI. So, taking a little break from some of the Tableau build-outs that we've been doing in the past, and today we're going to be taking you through exactly what all the buzz is with LangChain and AI, and what you can actually do with this library. The use case that we're working on today is going to be creating a one-shot prompt AI book generator. Okay. And so if you've ever been curious about how you can write your own book using AI and whether it's any good or not, it's all going to depend on how you prompt and use it. We've been playing around with this system for a little while now, but I thought today we go ahead and show you exactly what's possible. So let me go ahead and go full screen, and we'll go ahead and hop right into this demo today. All right, give me 1 second. I need to adjust my mic setting, make sure that we are using the audio from the right mic. Okay, everything looks good. So I'm sharing my screen right now, and I've got a couple of different tabs open. I'm going to walk you through this. So if you've never been exposed to LangChain, we're going to talk about exactly what this framework is and how you can use it. And I'm going to walk you through a live demo as well using Jupyter Notebook. So you can see exactly how it's running, what it's doing, and everything on the back end. I'm not going to necessarily go into large language models today and how ChatGPT is run. We can certainly talk about that. If that's something you're interested in, drop me a comment, let me know. Make sure that you're telling me exactly what you guys are looking for, what you'd like to learn more about. So let's go ahead and dive right into it. So LangChain is a framework. Okay, you can see this is the LangChain page. It's a library that's available in Python. And what it allows you to do is you can connect a large language model like ChatGPT with a piece of code with different types of components and that model. And then so you can prompt it just like you would through the interface today. But you can take it a step further and actually store information in memory. So here's memory down here. You can chain things. So imagine that you ask it, what is the capital of a particular country? And then the next question afterwards is, what's the population of that particular country? And then you want to know where's the most populous zip code within that city, within that country, right? So those might be a series of questions that you want to ask. Well, instead of having to prompt it multiple times, you can actually create that as a chain of prompts and use that to integrate it. But not just that, you can actually chain it with something called an agent. Okay, an agent is essentially a bot or a piece of code, a function that allows you to interact with something outside the large language model. So in this case, you might say, hey, I want to order a pizza. And the prompt, that might be your initial prompt. The first thing it does is it queries the large language model to say, okay, what are nearby pizza places around me? And then it finds out what's the nearest location that has delivery, all that. And then it uses an API to call out. It creates an agent that actually makes the phone call for you. Or maybe it interacts with the website and puts in the Domino's or Papa John's order so that they'll deliver that pizza to you. And that's exactly what an agent can do. So you can search on Google, or you can interact with a web page. You can send text messages, emails. There's all sorts of different functionalities you can add to agents. And then as those things are occurring, you've got callbacks, but you can chain all those things together after you get responses. So this is a very, very powerful framework. A lot of auto AI, auto GPT build-outs are using this. So this includes like Baby AGI. And so I've been experimenting and playing with some of these different frameworks and some of these pre-built libraries, really, that is in the AGI space. And they have varying different levels of success. But I think what's really powerful is understanding how LangChain works and how easy it is to build your own applications using this. and connecting with large language models. So let's go ahead and dive into this next part right here. I'm going to go ahead and show you guys what this looks like in our Jupyter notebook over here. So the first thing is that we want to make sure you've got some of these dependencies. I'm using python.environment or .env. That's just loading some of the API keys that I use on the back end, so that I'm not having to expose everything out here. And there's definitely instructions. You can Google how to set up your .env file and put it in your local directory. I'm not going to do explanation on Jupyter Notebook. You can run this in a local file on your in a command line. But I'm doing this just so that we can see this. We've got LangChain over here, and we've got Pinecone client. I'm not going to go into Pinecone today, but it is something called vector store. It allows us to save document information that we can query later. So I'll go ahead and run some of this code and refresh it because I show you guys exactly what's possible over here. So once we import our environmental variables and everything, get this started, we can start to interact using LangChain with OpenAI. In this case, we're loading in a particular model, and we're storing it as this variable called LLM, large language model. And we're using the text DaVinci 003. And this is essentially asking it, the large language model, just like you would if you were chatting with it, to explain large language models in one sentence. And so here's the response. Now, if we wanted to use, say, the chat API, we have to use a different type of setup. So this is just essentially call response or sequence to sequence network that we're engaging with. So we give it a input, it gives us an output, and that's what we get right there. So DaVinci is an older model, and it's still fairly decent model that you've got a lot of use cases, a lot of technology built on it. But we want to leverage some of the newer chat features. So we're going to go ahead and import in the LangChain schema, AI messages, human messages, so on and so forth. So in this case, to send a message to the chat OpenAI model, we've got to configure that model. And it's a different package, different library that we're using right there. But over here, what we're doing is we're setting up a system message and a human message. So this is the same as if you're interacting with OpenAI's Playground, where you have a system message, which is essentially like the role and the context of the model, what you wanted to play. So in this case, we're asking it to be a data scientist. And the default ChatGPT interface is a helpful AI assistant. So you can frame and preface exactly how you want your interaction with the model to be. And then over here, you can give it a human message, right? In this case, we just say write Python script, and we can submit that and then get a response. And then once when we get that response back, it's still running, we'll have it print out that response. All this is doing is taking the response and the content from that message and then just parsing out every new line. So that's just a new line return right there. And so here is an example script that you can use to simulate data using a neural network. And so if you've never written Python, you can use this to write Python code. You know, this is presumably verifiable Python code that you could run. You know, this is using the Keras library, which is a machine learning library, neural net wrapper that is very, very powerful and used for a lot of data science projects, a lot of machine learning. So that is a really, really good model. We're seeing that it's creating a sequential model. There's a 32 dense input shape is 10. So it's got a prelude type of activation function on that model, and it's hooking up to one I cannot talk right now. One node as the output. So I don't know exactly what it will build out, but it's saying that it's going to train the model, it's going to generate all these values and simulate some data. Yeah, so we didn't give it much more context than that, but that's a pretty good output right there. So the other way you can interact with this is, yes, you can enter in all these messages, but you can use something called prompt template. What's really nice about your prompt templates is that, similar to an F string where you can insert values, you can use the template to do the same thing. In fact, it's essentially an F string wrapper. And so over here, you can see that here's the value. And then when we set up our prompt, now we can say, here's our input variable, and we call it concept. And then template equals template, which is this value right here. So now if we take a look at our prompt, we can see that this is the output of the prompt. In fact, I'm going to run each one of these to make sure that we've got this session saved and everything's stored in here so we can keep working through this. And now you can see that there's this concept that's in here, and it's going to template format F string. So that's essentially the wrapper that's applying to it. And then when we submit it, we're actually calling the OpenAI chat model. So we're calling GPT 3.5 Turbo over here. And then when we run this next line over here, we can see, hey, we want to understand the concept of regularization. Over here, we want to understand the concept of autoencoder, and it comes back with description. Now, if we wanted to chain that together, so we might want this initial concept, which is great, but maybe I'm a layperson, I want to understand this a little better. So we can take that prompt and add it to our chain and then just run it, feeding in this value over here. So by default, it's just going to take that concept over here, and that's going to be the input that we provided. So now we can just run it. It's going to give us a similar result to that. It just depends on your temperature that you set. It looks like we've got a little bit of different words, but it's the same concept coming back. Now we're going to create a second prompt over here using a prompt template again. And in this case, it's going to turn the concept of, and this is ML concept, and explain it to me like I'm a 5 in 500 words. So we're going to run that, and that's going to create our second chain. So just like the first, but it's going to take in a different prompt, right? So this is prompt 2, and it's going to take in this concept, this input variable called ML concept. So now we can import LangChain chains and then import this simple sequential chain library. And by using that, we can actually chain these two chains. So chain 1, chain 2. So what it'll do is it'll run chain 1, and then whatever the output is going to be the input for chain 2. So this is kind of like a Lambda function where you can take an input, output it, and then use that you can chain those together. And so we're just running this in series. So you're going to start off with an autoencoder. It's going to run the first chain, and then it's going to take that explanation, this, for example, and feed into chain 2, and it's going to explain it to me like I'm 5. And we got verbose true, so we'll see exactly what happens here. It's going to start off the new sequence. It's going to run a simple sequential chain, and it's going to give us that output right there. Now it's running another query. It's going back and querying the API again, and it's going to come back with our 5-year-old explanation. So there we go. So in 500 words, it's explaining. An autoencoder is like a special machine that can learn how to do some really cool stuff. I'm adding words. It can learn to take a big bunch of data and make it smaller. It does it by learning to put the data into a special code. Think of it like a game of hide and seek. Okay, so it's explaining it like hide and seek. It makes it smaller, shrinks it down, and then makes it bigger. You reverse the process. So use that secret code to reconstruct original data. There we go. So that's pretty good right there. Looks like we surpassed our word limit right there, but not too bad. So I'm going to stop this particular demo right here and show you guys how we can take this approach. And we're not going to go into the vector stores and embeddings today, but I want to take this concept of being able to chain prompts together and then use a little bit of Python code to parse some things, and how you can build a one-shot AI book generator. Okay. So I know some folks have asked me, hey, is this something that is going to be released? Are you going to use this, make it available? I have no intention of making this available today. If there's enough people that are interested, maybe we'll take this out and build it out further. But this is just a proof of concept of what's possible in here. So I'm going to actually, I'm not going to run all of this code again. And the reason why is because it does take a little while. I'm just going to walk you through what we've done in this library or in this particular notebook, and what these libraries are allowing us to do when we're prompting it correctly. So the first thing I'm doing is just loading all of those dependencies, all those libraries. This is not a Python tutorial, so I'm sorry if you guys don't have experience. There's plenty of great tutorials out there on Python and Jupyter Notebook. Please look those up. YouTube is great for that. But if you have questions, drop them in the chat. Maybe I'll do a video training on that at some point in time in the future. So right here, what we've got is looks like I'm not sure if my audio is coming through actually. I am. All right. I hope everything's coming through clearly. I don't see the. Let me just double check one thing really quickly. If I switch this back over here, okay, I do see the audio. All right, I just wanted to double check that. I wasn't sure if it was coming through clearly. Okay, so I'm loading in all my libraries and dependencies over here, and then I'm configuring our chat model. So in this case, I'm using some preset settings for my environment variables. We've got an LLM model and temperature. So I'm loading that in. This is the same. You can do it. You can hard code these values. I've got my keys, my API keys, secret keys already loaded in my environment variables, so I don't have to expose them out here. So this is my setup, and I'm sharing everything for you guys to see. I'm not holding anything back. This is my system message, and you're a world-class ghostwriter and research assistant that helps authors become bestsellers. I think that's a pretty good role for our AI model. And we're setting up the system prompt right here where we're going to store it in that template. And then after we do that, we're going to initialize this with a subject. So I asked my wife, hey, what's a topic that we could write a book on, or you would like to write a book on? She said basket weaving, of course. And so we decided, hey, let's put the subject as building a basket weaving business, not biscuit, business. And so that's this block right here sets that up and initializes the subject. Once we do that, what we're going to do next is we're actually going to prompt, and this is our very first prompt that we're submitting. And we want to know what are the 10 most frequently searched for problems around the subject. So if you're going to write a book and you want to market it, you might want to understand why people are even interested in this topic, and search is a great way of figuring that out. So this is the human template that we're using over here. So what are the 10 most frequently searched problems around this subject? And so we're grabbing that subject over here. Return back a list. Do not include any context or pretext. Okay, and that's important because I wanted to just give me back a list. I don't really want any extra text or any response information coming back from our chat model. So when I submit that, this is what I'm doing. I'm storing the human prompt, which is coming from that human template. And then I'm creating the chat prompt using the system prompt, which is not going to change in this example, and a human message prompt over here, which were constructed in this block. Once when we do that, we're able to build out our response. So our response is going to be what comes back from our chat prompt. So we're going to engage our chat model, submit the prompt, subject equals subject. So we're be substituting this subject for subject in that prompt, and we're going to send it to message and then submitting it. And then once when that response comes back, we're going to grab just the content portion and store it in our response variable. So once we print that out, you can see these are all of the commonly searched for problems, the top 10, business plan, marketing strategies, business basket weaving, supplies and materials, pricing strategies for the products, techniques and tutorials, class and workshop, so on and so forth. And you can see that's a pretty good list of things people are searching for as it relates to building a basket weaving business. So we're going to store that in our problems, and it's going to just store it just like this. Now, we could use this list as our basis for building the book, but I wanted to take it a step further because I played around with this quite a few times. And what we did instead is we created another template over here. And in this case, and we could chain all this together, but what we did is take the base based on this list of problems, and now we're submitting in our problems, write me a book outline for subject, which is our original subject, consisting of only each chapter title. Return back a list, do not include any pretext, context or pretext. So same setup, prompt, human message, chat prompt. Now we're going to call back a response. In this case, we've got two variables that we're submitting into our prompt template. Grab the same thing, and now we've got a list of chapter titles. Introduction to basket weaving business, creating a basket weaving business plan, market research for basket weaving business, developing effective marketing strategies, sourcing supplied materials, pricing strategies, right? So this is, you can see it lines very similarly with this, but it's turning them into chapter titles. Hopefully there's nothing that is duplicated. Participating in basket weaving competition events. Okay, managing your basket weaving business, profitability, sustainability. So these are some great chapter titles. And once we've got that, now what are we going to do with it? So I'm going to take this list and we're going to parse it. So using a little bit of regex, we're going to parse it out, split it out into different, each one of these items, and then we're going to print out these different chapters. So now you can see it's a list object where each value is a different chapter title. So we're storing that in chapters. And now we're going to go ahead and create this book contents dictionary. Right? This is going to store all of our contents as we are using ChatGPT to produce our book. So now we're going to say create an outline for the book chapter on chapter. And then that's going to be each one of these values over here. So this whole list. Within the book context for the following chapters as not to be redundant. So this is a technique that you can use, especially when you're doing things recursively with a model, where you want to give it some context so it doesn't introduce the same information over and over and over again, because sometimes it gets a little bit redundant. So we're giving it the list so that in our chapter outline, we're not going to include topics that we're already going to be covering in future chapters. So the other part is we're going to condition our response. So we wanted to say return to response in a JSON format structure with the following keys. So chapter title, chapter outline, and then within it, a section title and section content for each section. Okay, sounds a little redundant, but the AI is going to get it. And then we're going to use that as our template, and then we're going to come through here, and it's going to process for chapter in chapters. So all of these, for each one of those, we're going to submit this template, and then we're going to go through this. Now we're going to build this out, and it's going to come back as a response like this. So now you can see this looks like a JSON object. We've got our chapter title, which is great. We've got our chapter outline, and each section has a title and section content. So it's giving us information for how we can write each part of our chapter. Once we have that, now we need to actually write the content. So we're going to do something very similar, right? We're going to take a template. We're going to say about the content. So we're actually going to parse out and grab the section content for the title of the section of the book chapter. We're going to take the title for a book on the subject and our original subject. So this is, again, you got to give it context. You got to think about this as a cold prompt to your AI system. You want to give it as much context as possible using your prior prompts so that it knows what it's trying to do. So we're just going to loop through each one of those sections within this JSON. And so now we've got our chapter title equals the outline, chapter title. And then within that, we're going to grab each section of our chapter outline, right? And in this case, we just got a single example. We've got our title, content, and we're just printing that out so you can see that here. And then response is going to be all of these values that we've previously created. It's going to be passed back into our human template. And then we're going to grab that and store the contents in our response variable. So if we submit all that and run it, you'll see that we've got this output over here when we print the response. Basket weaving is an ancient craft that has been practiced for centuries. It involves the creation of baskets using natural materials such as reeds, grass, and vines. All right, so it's giving a great introduction into basket weaving and what it's all about, and how we're going to introduce the business of basket weaving and its potential as a profitable venture. So you can see, like, this is the beginning, the introduction of this book. So you can take these two components, right, these two different loops, and essentially chain this together and produce all of the different content. So this is just that introduction section of your book. Now, if we wanted to build the whole book, we could actually take every chapter in chapters and pass it through to create our chapter outline. And then we could take that chapter outline and then write the content for each section. Now, I'll tell you, when I try to run this full loop, it times out because we're just hitting the API way too much and we're returning back way too many tokens. So there's a little bit of error handling that we're going to have to do, and timeout handling, maybe add some sleep and pause in there. But when you've produced all that content and you write back each one of those sections, you can store it in that file and then output it over here. And so almost end to end, we could write a book. Now, I'll tell you right out the gate that this book is not going to be perfect. You're going to have to do some additional editing, and you're going to have some redundant language in here. But this is a very, very basic example of what is possible using LangChain and the right approach when it comes to prompt engineering and chaining this together, where we took this simple statement right here, building a basket weaving business, and was able to turn it into a list of problems, a list of chapters, take each chapter, create different sections, and then have those sections write itself. You know, I don't know what you guys are working on, what your industry is, but if you want to create a piece of content that you can distribute to your audience, this becomes a really, really valuable tool and a very, very quick way of creating content where you can just chain this all together. So that's the example and tutorial that I want to take you guys through of what's possible for LangChain. The projects that we're building out today using LangChain is really more centered around knowledge stores that a business, whether it's small, medium, or large, where you can train a machine learning model like OpenAI's ChatGPT on your business. And by teaching it more about your business and using some of the things that we didn't cover today, like a vector store on the back end, we can actually help your clients learn more about your business by creating a chat bot that they can engage with that is smarter than a pre-programmed template generator. And on the other side is we can also create it as an internal subject matter expert. So for example, if you're in a manufacturing space and maybe you guys do bottling and you've got a manual on all of the different issues that your machine on your assembly line might have. And it's a very, very technical manual, and it's got 30 pages of troubleshooting in case something goes wrong. Well, instead of having to read through that manual to find out exactly what's going on, imagine if you trained your AI model on that entire manual. So with LangChain, with some of these other technologies, we can actually ingest all of that and make those content searchable. But not just that, we can make a bot that is conversational on that topic. So now when the worker is having an issue, they can engage, whether it's on a phone, mobile app, or on a desktop computer interface, and you can ask the model, hey, I see this red light and this thing happened, and I think our system is jammed. What should I do about it? And it can go back and query the instruction manual and say, here are what I would recommend that you check out. And so now you have a subject matter expert who's been there, done that. And if you augment that with other people's interactions, emails, memos, process and procedure, SOP guides, anything that your organization has developed, you've created a really, really powerful system that becomes a subject matter expert in your business that you can use to train new employees, new people, help them get up to speed much, much quicker. So it's definitely a way to augment your staff and become a powerful subject matter expert that never has to sleep, and really help improve your business as you grow and scale, so that you can continue to transfer knowledge from one person to another in your organization. So that's the most popular and powerful use case that we're seeing today with LangChain, Pinecone vector stores, and large language models like ChatGPT. And I want to show you guys what's possible by using this book builder AI example. It's something that I keep hearing people talk about and want to see if we can do this. And we were able to put this together in just a few days. So you could do this yourself as well. And so if you're interested in looking at what's possible for your small business or large organization, we can certainly come in and do an assessment on what is possible, where's those knowledge store, document stores, and how you can use AI models, large language models, to get access to all of that information that is potentially untapped, unleveraged, that you guys have built out and accumulated over years and years of doing business. So that's it for me today, guys. Feel free to reach out, drop comments. Be sure to like, follow, subscribe us. We've got a YouTube channel where all this stuff is available. You can always go back, take a look at all of our past training videos. And as always, feel free to reach out, message me if there's anything I can do to help you in your business. That's it for today. Take care. God bless.